He wielded her clan's sword to protect her. Oblivious, he now had to become her husband. The rain fell in sheets across the dueling grounds of Kethvalar, turning the dark gray stone into a treacherous mirror that reflected the angry purple sky above. Riker Voss watched from beneath the shelter of a nearby overhang, his broad shoulders hunched against the chill. He hadn't planned on stopping on this backwater planet, just a quick refuel before heading to his next contract, but the storm had grounded all flights. Now he found himself witness to what appeared to be some kind of ritual combat between locals. The crowd of violet-skinned aliens formed a tight circle around two combatants, their silver hair gleaming despite the gloom. Their murmurs rose and fell like the tide, a language his translator implant struggled to fully decode. "Outsider," a gravelly voice spoke beside him. "You should not linger here. This is clan business." Riker glanced down at the wizened alien elder, noting the elaborate silver markings that adorned his violet skin. "Just waiting out the storm. My ship needs another hour before she's ready to fly." The elder's eyes, solid black orbs without pupil or iris, narrowed. "Then wait elsewhere. What happens here is not for foreign eyes." But Riker's attention had already shifted back to the duel. One fighter, clearly female by human standards, moved with exceptional grace despite her obvious exhaustion. Her opponent, a male nearly twice her size, pressed his advantage relentlessly. The female warrior's silver hair, longer than any Riker had seen among the locals, whipped around her as she parried a vicious strike. "Who are they?" he asked, ignoring the elder's warning. The elder sighed. "The female is Lyrathi Invarin, last daughter of a once great house. The male is Drakkar Keth, champion of the Ascendant clan. He fights to claim her family's ancestral lands. And if she wins, she will not win," the elder stated flatly. "Her clan has fallen too far. This is merely formality." As if to punctuate his words, Drakkar landed a punishing blow that sent Lyrathi sprawling across the wet stone. Her tight black combat suit, accented with intricate silver straps that hugged her slender form, was now torn in several places, revealing deep cuts that leaked indigo blood. The crowd roared its approval as Drakkar circled his fallen opponent. Lyrathi struggled to rise, one hand still clutching her clan's sword, a magnificent blade with elaborate engravings that seemed to glow with an inner light despite the gloom. "Yield, daughter of nothing!" Drakkar's voice boomed across the arena. "Your father's blade deserves a stronger hand." "I will die before I yield my family's honor," Lyrathi spat, though her voice trembled with pain. Something about her defiance struck a chord in Riker. He'd seen too many underdogs crushed by those with power. It was the story of half the planets in this sector. Before he could think better of it, he was moving, pushing through the crowd. Drakkar raised his blade for a killing blow. "No, stop!" Lyrathi cried out, but not at her opponent, at Riker. Too late. As Drakkar's blade descended, Riker snatched up Lyrathi's fallen sword from beside her and intercepted the strike with a resounding clash of metal. The impact jarred his arm to the shoulder, but he held firm, his muscular frame absorbing the shock. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Drakkar stepped back, his four eyes widening in shock. "This isn't your fight, human," he snarled. "Seems unfair to kill someone who's already down," Riker replied, adjusting his grip on the sword. It felt strangely warm in his hand, almost alive. "You fool," Lyrathi whispered, her voice a mix of horror and disbelief. "Do you have any idea what you've done?" Before Riker could respond, the elder he'd spoken to earlier pushed through the crowd, followed by several others in elaborate ceremonial robes. They stared at Riker with expressions ranging from shock to outrage to, most disturbingly, amusement. "The blade has been claimed," the elder announced, his voice carrying across the suddenly silent arena. "By ancient law, unbroken since the first dawn, he who wields the clan's sword in defense of its bearer becomes bound to that bearer in the sacred bond of marriage." Riker blinked. What now?" "You have claimed the right to be Lyrathi Invarin's husband," the elder continued implacably. "The duel is suspended. The rite of bonding must now commence." Riker looked down at Lyrathi, who was staring at him with an expression that suggested she couldn't decide whether to thank him or stab him with the very blade he just used to save her. "I was just trying to help," he said weakly. "Help?" she hissed, struggling to her feet. You've just bound yourself to a dying clan on a planet you know nothing about. The blade chooses human, and it has chosen you. There is no escape from this, for either of us. As the implications sank in, Riker felt the weight of 100 alien eyes upon him. He'd faced down pirates, corporate assassins, and hostile wildlife on a dozen worlds, but nothing had prepared him for this. He'd come to this planet for a simple refueling stop and somehow ended up engaged to a woman he'd never even spoken to. Well, he said finally, forcing a smile that didn't reach his eyes, this is going to make for one hell of a story if I live long enough to tell it. You can't seriously expect me to go through with this, Riker muttered as he followed Larathi through the winding corridors of what she had tersely explained was her clan's ancestral stronghold, a massive structure carved directly into the face of a mountain. Despite her injuries, Larathi moved with determined grace, though Riker noticed how she occasionally steadied herself against the wall. The indigo blood from her wounds had dried to a dark crust against her violet skin. What I expect is irrelevant, she replied without turning. The blade chose you. That is all that matters. A sword can't choose anything. It's an inanimate object. This made her stop and turn, her silver hair swinging like a curtain. Up close, he could see that her eyes weren't entirely black as he'd first thought. Tiny flecks of silver danced within them, like distant stars. The Envaran blade has been forged in the blood of my ancestors for 16 generations, she said, her voice low and intense. It carries the essence of our lineage. When you grasped it in defense of my life, it recognized something in you worthy of continuing our line. Riker ran a hand through his short brown hair. Look, where I come from, marriage requires at least a first date, maybe dinner. Definitely mutual consent. Where you come from is irrelevant now, she cut him off. You're here and you have invoked ancient law. My clan stands on the brink of extinction. Our territories are being seized, our people scattered. That duel was my last chance to preserve what little remains of our honor. And now, a complex emotion flickered across her face. Now we have possibilities, unexpected ones. Before Riker could press further, they arrived at a set of massive doors inlaid with silver patterns that seemed to shift subtly in the dim light. Two guards stood at attention, their expressions hardening at the sight of Riker. The elders await, one said, not bothering to hide his contempt. The chamber beyond was circular, with a domed ceiling that revealed the stormy sky through sections of transparent crystal. 7 elderly Keth Valerians sat in a semicircle, their elaborate robes and silver facial markings denoting their status. The central figure, a female with hair so long it pooled on the floor around her, raised a gnarled hand as they entered. Approach, daughter of Envaran. Bring your chosen. Larathi straightened despite her injuries and walked forward with dignity. Riker followed, acutely aware of how out of place his weather-beaten flight jacket and cargo pants looked in this formal setting. High Elder, Larathi bowed. I present Riker Voss of Earth. A human, the High Elder's voice dripped with disdain. You bring a human before the sacred circle and claim him as bondmate? I claim nothing, Larathi responded. The blade chose. Murmurs rippled through the assembled elders. One male with particularly elaborate silver facial markings leaned forward. This is unprecedented. No outsider has ever wielded a clan blade. Perhaps because no outsider has ever been foolish enough to interfere in clan matters, another elder snapped. The High Elder raised her hand for silence. The law is absolute. If the blade accepted his touch in your defense, then the bond is formed. However, her gaze shifted to Riker. The question remains whether this human understands what he has committed himself to. With all due respect, Riker stepped forward, I don't. I saw someone about to be killed and I acted. Where I come from, that's just basic decency. Decency, the High Elder repeated the word as if tasting something unfamiliar. An interesting concept, yet irrelevant. The blade does not recognize decency, it recognizes strength, honor, and bloodline compatibility. Bloodline compatibility? Riker frowned. You mean? Yes, human. The blade would not have accepted your touch if your genetic structure was incompatible with continuing the Envaran line. This is unexpected. A commotion at the chamber entrance interrupted them. Drakkar Keth strode in, flanked by his own entourage. His massive frame seemed to fill the room with menace. "This farce has gone on long enough," he boomed. The human interfered in sacred combat. The duel was not concluded. The duel became irrelevant the moment he claimed the blade, or the High Elder responded coolly. Drakkar's 4 eyes narrowed to slits. "I challenge the validity of this bond. The human knows nothing of our ways. He cannot possibly fulfill the duties of a clan husband." "That," the High Elder acknowledged, "is a legitimate concern." Lirathi stepped forward. "By law, he has 1 full cycle of our moons to prove his worthiness. During this time, he is under clan protection." "A cycle?" Drakkar laughed harshly. "I'll need far less time than that to prove him unworthy." He turned his gaze to Riker. "Human, do you even know what duties you have claimed? You must defend clan territories, participate in council, sire strong offspring." "Whoa, let's pump the brakes on that last part," Riker interrupted, earning confused looks from everyone but Lirathi, whose translator apparently understood the idiom. "The human will be instructed in his duties," Lirathi stated firmly, "and I will vouch for his capacity to learn." "Bold words from the daughter of a fallen house," Drakkar sneered. "Very well. 1 cycle. Then we shall see if your human pet can stand as a true clan husband, or if he will flee back to the stars where he belongs." After Drakkar stormed out, the High Elder fixed Riker with a penetrating stare. "You have much to learn in very little time, human. Your actions have consequences beyond what you can imagine." "Story of my life," Riker muttered. Later, as Lirathi led him to what would apparently be his quarters, Riker finally asked the question that had been burning in his mind. "Why didn't you just let me leave? You could have told them I didn't know what I was doing." Lirathi stopped, her expression unreadable in the dim corridor. "Because the moment you wielded that blade, you became my clan's last hope. Without you, Drakkar would have killed me today, and the Anvaran line would have ended. With you," she hesitated, "with you, there is a chance. A small one, but more than I had this morning." "A chance for what exactly?" Her gaze met his, fierce and unyielding. "A chance to rebuild, to reclaim what was stolen from us, to ensure that my family's sacrifices were not in vain." She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the unfamiliar spice of her skin. "You may not have chosen this, Riker Voss, but neither did I. We are bound now by blood and honor. The only question is whether you will run from that bond, or embrace it." With that, she turned and continued down the corridor, leaving Riker to wonder just what kind of storm he'd flown into, and whether he had any hope of navigating his way through it. "Again," Lirathi commanded, her voice echoing through the training chamber. Riker exhaled slowly, raising the practice sword, a weighted replica of the clan blade that now rested in a ceremonial chamber. His muscles burned from 3 hours of continuous drills. "Your stance is still wrong," she circled him critically. "Lower your center, bend your knees more. On Earth, we have this concept called taking a break." Riker grunted, but adjusted his position nonetheless. 5 days had passed since the fateful duel, 5 days of intensive cultural and combat training that left Riker exhausted. The lunar cycle Lirathi had mentioned translated to roughly 28 Earth days, meaning he had just over 3 weeks left to become proficient in skills the Keth Valerians spent lifetimes mastering. "Breaks are for those who can afford them," Lirathi replied, though she moved to a nearby bench and sat, wincing slightly. Her wounds were healing, but not as quickly as she pretended. Riker lowered the practice sword. "You should be resting too. Those cuts were deep. My physical condition is irrelevant compared to the task at hand, which is turning me into a proper clan husband in record time." He joined her on the bench. "Look, I get that this is important to you, but there's only so much a human brain can absorb in one day." For a moment, he thought she would argue, but instead she nodded. "You're right. I've been overzealous in your training." "Tell me about your father," Riker said, seizing the rare moment of personal conversation. Lirathi was silent for so long, he thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was softer than he'd heard before. Therian Navarin was the finest swordsman of his generation. He led our clan through the border wars and established alliances that kept us strong for decades. Her fingers traced an invisible pattern on the bench. But strength invites challenge. The Keith clan had always envied our territories, especially the crystal mines in the northern reaches. What happened? Poison, she said flatly. Not honorable combat, not a formal challenge, just poison in his evening meal. By the time I returned from my military service, he was gone, and our clan was in disarray. Drakhar's father had already seized 2 of our outlying territories. Riker absorbed this. And no one did anything? There must be some kind of planetary law. Law? Lirathi's laugh was bitter. The law is simple. The strong survive, the weak perish. Without my father's leadership, we were seen as weak. One by one, our allies abandoned us. So you challenged Drakkar to regain what was lost. She nodded. It was not my wisest decision, but it was the only option remaining. A young messenger entered, her silver hair cropped short. Honored Lirathi, the Council of 3 Clans requests your presence and that of your bondmate. Lirathi stood abruptly. Now? The council wasn't scheduled to convene for another 8 days. Clan Keth called for an emergency session. All houses must attend. After the messenger departed, Riker raised an eyebrow. I'm guessing this isn't good news. It's Drakhar's first move, Lirathi confirmed, already moving toward formal attire. He's forcing a public evaluation before you're ready. The council chamber was a vast amphitheater carved from dark stone. 3 massive clan banners hung from the ceiling. The silver sword of Envarin, now faded, the crimson claw of Keith, bright and dominant, and the blue spiral of Thal, the most neutral of the 3 major clans. Hundreds of Keth Valerians filled the tiered seating. Riker, dressed in formal Envarin attire, felt like an exhibit in an alien zoo. Remember, Lirathi whispered, speak only when directly addressed, maintain eye contact to show respect, and keep my hands visible at all times to show I'm not reaching for a weapon. Riker finished. I was paying attention during the etiquette lessons. At the center of the chamber, elevated on a circular platform, sat the heads of the 3 major clans. Drakkar represented Keth, his massive frame draped in ceremonial armor. Beside him, a serene-looking female represented Clan Thal. And for Clan Navarin, where's your representative? Riker whispered. You're looking at her, Lirathi replied tightly. With my father gone, I am the last of our bloodline old enough to sit on the council. The High Elder stood and raised her hands for silence. The Council of 3 Clans is convened at the request of Clan Keth. Who speaks for the petitioners? Drakkar rose, his 4 eyes settling on Riker with contempt. I, Drakkar Keith, speak for my clan and for all who value our ancient traditions. 5 days ago, an outsider interfered in sacred combat and claimed a clan blade through ignorance rather than right. Now we are asked to accept this human as a clan husband? He spat the word human like a curse. The law is clear, Lirathi countered, her voice strong despite being outnumbered. The blade accepted him. The bond is formed. A clan in Varen acknowledges Riker Voss as my rightful husband and a member of our house. A blade cannot choose an outsider who knows nothing of our ways. Drakkar slammed his fist on the council table. The Thal representative raised a slender hand. Perhaps we should hear from the human himself. All eyes turned to Riker. He straightened his shoulders, keenly aware that his next words could either strengthen or destroy Lirathi's position. Members of the council, he began carefully, I won't pretend to understand all your customs or history. Where I come from, we don't have clan blades or ritual combat, but we do understand honor, loyalty, and keeping our word. He paused, meeting Drakkar's hostile gaze. I didn't know what I was agreeing to when I picked up that sword, but I'm not in the habit of walking away from my commitments, even accidental ones. Fine words, Drakkar sneered, but words alone prove nothing. If you truly wish to honor our ways, then prove your worth through action, not empty promises. What do you propose? The High Elder asked. Drakkar's lips curved in a predatory smile. The trial of 3 challenges, traditional, binding, and perfectly suited to test an outsider's worthiness. Lirathi stiffened. That trial hasn't been invoked in 7 generations. Perhaps because it hasn't been necessary until now, Dracker countered. Unless your human bondmate wishes to concede his inadequacy now. Riker felt Lirathi's hand close around his wrist in warning, but he'd already had enough of Dracker's posturing. I accept, he said firmly. The chamber erupted in surprised exclamations. Lirathi's fingers dug painfully into his arm. You don't know what you've just agreed to, she hissed. Then I guess you'll have to explain it to me, he whispered back, because I'm not backing down from this bully. The High Elder raised her hands for silence. It is decided. The trial of 3 challenges will commence at first light tomorrow. The human Riker Voss will face tests of body, mind, and spirit. Should he fail any challenge, the bond will be dissolved, and Clan Nevarin will forfeit all remaining territories to Clan Keth. What? Riker turned to Lirathi in alarm. I tried to warn you, she muttered, her expression grim. As the council adjourned, Dracker approached them. Enjoy your last night as a clan husband human. Tomorrow you will learn the true meaning of Keth's Valerian strength. Back in Lirathi's chambers, she explained the challenges. Physical combat against a champion of Drakar's choosing, a mental test of strategy and knowledge of their history and laws, and a spiritual journey through the ancestral memories stored within the clan blade itself. And I have to do all 3 of these things tomorrow? Yes, and you must succeed at all 3, or everything is lost. Her voice softened. I should have explained this before. I was trying to protect you from the full weight of what you've stumbled into. For the first time, Riker saw genuine vulnerability in her expression. On impulse, he reached out and took her hand. Her skin was cooler than a human's, but soft, and she didn't pull away. I may not know much about your world, he said quietly, but I'm a quick learner, and I'm not going to let Dracker win without one hell of a fight. Something shifted in her gaze, surprise perhaps, or the first glimmer of genuine respect. Then we have much to prepare and very little time. Dawn broke over the mountain fortress, painting the dark stone with streaks of amber light. In the ancient arena where Riker had first seen Lirathi fight, hundreds of Keth Valerians gathered to witness the trial of 3 challenges. The atmosphere was tense with anticipation. No outsider had ever undertaken the trials, and most spectators clearly expected to witness a humiliating failure. Riker stood at the edge of the combat circle, dressed in modified Enveran battle attire. The traditional armor had been adjusted to fit his broader human frame, the deep purple fabric emblazoned with silver clan markings. Beside him, Lirathi made final adjustments to his bracers. Remember what we practiced, she said quietly. Keth Valerian warriors rely on speed and precision. They'll expect you to fight like a human, all brute force and no finesse. So I'll surprise them, Riker replied, flexing his fingers around the practice sword's hilt. Despite his confident words, his mouth was dry. One night of intensive training couldn't possibly prepare him for what was coming. Lirathi's fingers lingered on his arm. You don't have to do this. We could still find another way. There is no other way, and you know it, he said gently. Besides, I've survived worse odds. Her expression suggested she doubted that, but she nodded. Then may the ancestors guide your blade. A horn sounded, signaling the beginning of the trial. As Drakkar approached from across the arena, followed by a Keth Valerian male nearly as large as himself, clad in crimson battle armor. For the first challenge, Drakkar announced to the assembly, I present Korax, third blade of Clan Keth, and undefeated in 17 ritual combats. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Riker glanced at Lirathi, whose expression had tightened. He's chosen their best close combat specialist, she whispered. Korax is known for disabling opponents rather than killing them. It's considered more skillful. Great, Riker muttered. So he'll just maim me instead of finishing the job. The High Elder stepped forward. The rules of combat are simple. The challenge ends when one combatant yields or is rendered unconscious. Lethal force is forbidden. She fixed Korax with a stern gaze at this last point, suggesting she understood Drakkar's choice all too well. Riker stepped into the circle, facing his opponent. Korax towered over him, all 4 eyes narrowed in assessment. I've never fought a human before, he said, his voice surprisingly melodic for his size. I hear your kind bleeds red. I look forward to confirming this. Happy to disappoint you, Riker replied, settling into the stance Lirathi had drilled into him through the night. The horn sounded again, and Korax attacked with blinding speed. Only Riker's combat instincts, honed through years of mercenary work, saved him from being immediately overwhelmed. He parried the first strike and sidestepped, using the alien's momentum against him. Korax recovered instantly, spinning with inhuman grace to launch another assault. This time his blade slipped past Riker's guard, scoring a shallow cut across his ribs. A gasp went up from the crowd at the sight of crimson blood seeping through the purple fabric. "First blood to Kith," Drakkar called out smugly. Riker circled warily, reassessing his opponent. Liberathi had been right. Trying to match a Keth Valerian in speed and precision was suicide. He needed to fight like a human, but smarter. The next time Korax lunged, Riker didn't try to parry. Instead, he stepped into the attack, accepting a glancing blow to his shoulder in exchange for getting inside the alien's guard. Before Korax could adjust, Riker slammed his forehead directly into the bridge of the Keth Valerian's nose. A decidedly non-traditional move that sent indigo blood spraying. Stunned silence fell over the arena, followed by outraged shouts from Clan Keth's section. "Dishonorable," someone yelled. "No!" The High Elder's voice cut through the commotion. "Unconventional, but within the rules of combat." Korax wiped his face, his expression shifting from surprise to grudging respect. So humans do have some fight in them. The battle continued, each combatant adjusting to the other's style. Riker took more cuts but landed several solid blows of his own, fighting with a mixture of Lirathi's teachings and the street fighting techniques he'd learned across a dozen worlds. As minutes stretched into a half hour, both fighters began to tire. In the crowd, Riker glimpsed Lirathi watching intently, her posture rigid with tension. Something about her unwavering faith gave him a second win. When Korax launched what should have been an overwhelming flurry of strikes, Riker found reserves of strength he didn't know he possessed. Ducking under a horizontal slash, he dropped his sword, grabbed Korax's wrist with both hands, and used the alien's own momentum to flip him over his shoulder, a basic human grappling move that no Keth Valerian would expect. Korax crashed to the ground with bone-jarring force, and before he could recover, Riker had retrieved his blade and placed it at the alien's throat. "Yield," he panted. For a moment, Korax's four eyes blazed with defiance. Then, remarkably, he smiled. "I yield to the human bondmate of Envarin." The arena erupted in a mixture of cheers and disbelieving exclamations. Riker offered his hand, helping Korax to his feet in a gesture that clearly surprised the Keth Valerian warrior. "You fight, strangely," Korax acknowledged, "but effectively." Durakar's face was a mask of barely controlled fury as the High Elder stepped forward. "The first challenge is complete. Riker Voss has proven his physical worthiness." She turned to Riker. "Rest now. The second challenge begins at midday." As he left the combat circle, Lirathi met him at the edge of the arena, her eyes bright with an emotion he couldn't quite identify. "That was," she began. "Completely improvised," he finished with a tired grin. "Your training helped, but I figured my best chance was to surprise him." "You certainly did that." A smile tugged at her lips. "I've never seen anyone headbutt a Keth champion before." "First time for everything." He winced as the adrenaline began to fade, making him acutely aware of his various cuts and bruises. In a private chamber adjacent to the arena, Lirathi helped clean and dress his wounds. Her touch was clinical at first, but gradually softened as she worked. Riker found himself watching the play of emotions across her face. Concern, relief, and something deeper that made his pulse quicken in a way that had nothing to do with combat. "I didn't think you'd win," she admitted quietly, applying a healing salve to a cut on his shoulder. "Thanks for the vote of confidence. It's not that." Her fingers lingered on his skin. "Korax has defeated warriors with decades more training than you've had. What you did out there was remarkable." Riker caught her hand before she could withdraw it. "Maybe your ancestors knew what they were doing when that blade chose me." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the air between them seemed charged with unspoken possibilities. Lirathi's gaze dropped to his lips, then back to his eyes, a flush of darker violet spreading across her cheeks. The moment was broken by a sharp knock at the door. "Second challenge begins in 20 minutes, a voice called. Lirathi pulled away, her composure returning like a mask sliding into place. We should prepare. The test of mind will be even more difficult for you than combat." As she turned to gather the materials they'd prepared through the night, Riker caught her wrist gently. "Lirathi?" She looked back, vulnerability flickering briefly across her features. "Thank you," he said simply, "for believing in me even when you didn't think I could win." Something softened in her expression. "Perhaps I'm beginning to understand why the Blade chose you after all." The High Elder recovered her composure first. "The trial is complete. Riker Voss has passed all 3 challenges. By ancient law and the will of the ancestors, he is confirmed as the rightful husband of Lirathi Invaran and a true member of her house." A cheer rose from the small contingent of Invarin's supporters, quickly joined by members of Clan Thal and even some from lesser houses. Dakakar's face contorted with barely suppressed rage, but even he could not dispute the Blade's transformation, a sign more powerful than any council ruling. As the formal ceremony concluded, Riker carefully placed the sword back on the altar, his mind still reeling from the communion experience. The assembled witnesses filed out, leaving only Lirathi and Riker in the sacred chamber. "What happened?" she asked softly, approaching him with wonder in her eyes. "The Blade has never responded like that to anyone in recorded history." Riker ran a hand through his hair, struggling to articulate the overwhelming experience. "I saw them, all of them, your ancestors, your father." Lirathi's breath caught. "My father spoke to you. He said the Invaran line values heart above all else." Riker took her hands in his. "And I think I finally understand what that means." In the crystal's blue glow, Lirathi's violet skin took on an ethereal quality. Her silver hair, loosened from its formal arrangement, cascaded around her shoulders. Riker had thought her beautiful from the first moment he saw her fighting in the arena. But now, seeing her vulnerability mixed with strength, he found her absolutely captivating. "Lirathi," he said softly, "I didn't choose this bond, but if I had known you then as I know you now, I would have chosen it freely." Her eyes widened, flecks of silver dancing in their depths. "You cannot mean that. Our ways are not your ways. Our world is not your world. Maybe that's exactly why the Blade chose me." He stepped closer. "Maybe sometimes we need someone who sees things differently." For a moment, she remained perfectly still. Then, with a decisiveness that characterized everything she did, Lirathi closed the distance between them and pressed her lips to his. The kiss was tentative at first, a crossing of boundaries neither had expected to traverse. Then something ignited between them, a recognition that transcended their physical differences. When they finally broke apart, both were breathing hard. "That was," Riker began. "Not a traditional Keth Valerian greeting," she finished with unexpected humor, a smile playing at the corners of her mouth. "I'd hate to be too traditional," he murmured, drawing her back to him. This time their kiss deepened, awakening sensations that had been building since their first meeting. The world around them seemed to fade away, leaving only the two of them in a bubble of blue light and ancient stone. When they finally separated, Lirathi's expression had transformed. Gone was the guarded warrior, replaced by a woman whose desires matched his own. "Come," she said, taking his hand. "We have much to discuss. In private." In Lirathi's chambers, they talked for hours, about their worlds, their pasts, their hopes. With each revelation, the distance between them diminished. As night deepened, their conversation gave way to more intimate exchanges. Touches became caresses, words became whispers. "Are you certain?" Riker asked as they stood at the threshold of irrevocable change. "Your customs, my customs already made you my husband," she reminded him, her fingers tracing the outline of his jaw. "Now I choose to make you my mate in truth." What followed was a communion as profound as Riker's experience with the Blade, a joining of not just bodies but spirits. They moved together in the ancient dance of passion, discovering how their differences enhanced rather than hindered their connection. Together, they created a harmony neither had experienced before. Afterward, as they lay entwined in the soft glow of Keth Valor's twin moons, Lirathi traced the battle scars on Riker's chest with gentle fingers. "The elders say that when two bloodlines are truly compatible, the union can create life that carries the strengths of both," she murmured, "but such unions across species are exceedingly rare." Riker caught her hand, bringing it to his lips. Your father seemed to think our connection was meant to be. Maybe there's more to this compatibility than we understand. She smiled, a hint of mischief in her eyes. Perhaps we should test this theory thoroughly. Weeks passed, and with Riker officially confirmed as Lirathi's husband, the political landscape began to shift. Clan Thal offered a formal alliance. Smaller houses pledged their support. Even Korax, the warrior Riker had defeated, began training regularly with him, developing a fighting style that blended human and Keth Valerian techniques. Only Drakkar remained openly hostile, though even he was forced to acknowledge the legitimacy of Riker's position. The immediate threat to Clan Envarin's territories had been neutralized. One morning, Riker awoke to find Lirathi already dressed, standing by the window with an unreadable expression. What's wrong?" he asked, immediately alert. She turned to him, her hand resting lightly on her abdomen. "Nothing is wrong, but something unexpected has happened." Riker sat up, suddenly fully awake. "Are you?" "Yes." Her voice was soft with wonder. "Our bloodlines are indeed compatible, my husband. I carry your child, our child, within me." The news hit Riker like a physical force. In all his years traveling the stars, he had never imagined himself as a father, let alone the father of a child who would bridge two worlds. "That's..." He searched for words, finding only inadequate ones. Amazing. Incredible." Lirathi crossed to the bed, taking his hands in hers. "It is unprecedented. There has never been a child of human and Keth Valerian blood. Our son or daughter will be the first of their kind." "How can you be sure it's even possible? That the pregnancy will progress normally?" "The clan healers have confirmed it. The child grows strong already." Her eyes met his, suddenly vulnerable. "Are you pleased?" In answer, Riker pulled her into his arms, holding her with a tenderness that conveyed what words could not. "I never thought I'd have a family," he said against her silver hair. "You've given me something I didn't even know I wanted." As they embraced in the morning light, neither could have predicted how their child would soon become the center of a storm that would transform not just their lives, but the future of Keth Valor itself. The news of Lirathi's unprecedented pregnancy spread through the clans like wildfire. What had begun as a curiosity, a human becoming a clan husband, was now a phenomenon that challenged the very foundations of Keth Valerian society. A child of two worlds carrying both human and Keth Valerian blood had never been conceived before. Many viewed the pregnancy as a miracle, a sign of favor from the ancestors. Others, particularly those loyal to Drakkar, saw it as an abomination that threatened the purity of their bloodlines. The debate raged in council chambers and common houses alike. For Riker and Lirathi, however, the political implications took a back seat to more immediate concerns. As her pregnancy progressed, Lirathi's body underwent changes that no Keth Valerian healer had seen before. The child grew faster than a typical Keth Valerian fetus, but slower than a human one, developing unique characteristics that reflected both lineages. "The healers say everything is progressing well," Lirathi reported one evening as they sat in their private garden, watching Keth Valar's moons rise over the mountain peaks. Her hand rested on her swollen abdomen, where the outline of their active child was occasionally visible. Riker placed his hand beside hers, marveling at the strong kicks against his palm. "He's going to be a fighter like his mother. Or perhaps a wanderer like his father," she countered with a smile. "Either way, he will forge his own path." "He?" Riker raised an eyebrow. "You know it's a boy." Lirathi nodded. "The healers confirmed it today. A son of Envarin and of Earth." Their peaceful moment was interrupted by the arrival of Malus, a young Envarin guard. "The High Elder requests your immediate presence in the council chamber. Clan Keth has called for an emergency session." As they made their way there, Riker noticed increased security throughout the fortress. Guards from Clan Thal stood alongside Envarin soldiers at key positions, a show of alliance that would have been unthinkable months ago. The chamber was already filled when they arrived. Drakkar stood at the center, a weathered scroll case clutched in his massive hands. "Ah, the human and his mate!" Drakkar's voice dripped with barely concealed disgust. How convenient that you arrived just as we discussed the abomination growing within her." Riker stepped forward, anger flaring, but Lirathi placed a restraining hand on his arm. Choose your next words carefully, Drakkar, she said, her voice carrying clearly. You speak of the heir to Clan Varen. An heir? Drakkar laughed harshly. Or the fulfillment of the prophecy of dissolution? He held up the scroll case. This text, recovered from the ancient archives, speaks of a time when blood from beyond the stars mingles with the blood of the first clans, heralding the end of the old ways. The High Elder stepped forward. May I examine this prophecy? Reluctantly, Drakkar surrendered the scroll. After several minutes of silent reading, the High Elder looked up. Drakkar has selectively quoted from this text, she announced. The full passage reads, When blood from beyond the stars mingles with the blood of the first clans, the child born of this union shall herald the end of the old ways of division and strife. In this child's hands, the blades of many houses shall become one, and a new age of unity shall dawn. The chamber erupted in exclamations. Drakkar's face contorted with fury. You twist the words to favor them. I read what is written, the High Elder replied calmly. And there is more. The prophecy continues. The blade of the oldest house shall choose the star blood bearer, recognizing in him the heart that can heal our fractured world. All eyes turned to the transformed Envarin blade, now worn at Riker's hip. The blade that had chosen him, that had changed to accommodate both Keth Valerian and human symbols. This cannot be coincidence, the tall representative spoke up. The human, the blade, the child, all foretold. Superstitious nonsense, Drakkar roared. Would you hand the future of our world to a half-breed child and its alien father based on ancient scribbles? We would follow the will of the ancestors, another elder countered, as we always have. As the debate intensified, Larathi suddenly gasped, doubling over. Riker caught her, alarm shooting through him as he saw the pain etched on her face. The child, she whispered, he comes. The council forgotten, Riker swept Larathi into his arms and rushed from the chamber, followed closely by Varin guards and the clan's chief healer. Hours later in the sacred birthing chamber, Larathi fought through a labor that challenged even her warrior strength. Riker remained at her side throughout, his hand nearly crushed in her grip as contractions racked her body. When their son finally entered the world, his first cry echoed through the ancient stone halls with surprising power. The healers cleaned him quickly, then placed him in Larathi's arms. A perfect blend of both parents. His skin was a paler violet than his mother's, with subtle undertones of human pink. Wisps of silver-white hair crowned his head, but his eyes, when they opened briefly, were unmistakably human in structure, though with flecks of silver like Larathi's. Tharian, Larathi said softly, after my father, Tharian, Riker, and Varan. Their private moment was interrupted by a commotion outside. The doors burst open to reveal Korax, blood streaming from a cut above his eyes. Drakkar has made his move, he panted. He claims the prophecy is a forgery and has called for the child to be examined by Keth healers to ensure its viability. But his real intentions are clear. Riker stood, placing himself between the door and his family. He'll have to go through me first. And me, Korax affirmed. I stand with Envarin in this, as do others. Indeed, behind Korax stood not only Envarin guards, but warriors from Clan Thal, and even some wearing Keth colors, those who had chosen to defy Drakkar's increasingly desperate grab for power. The High Elder has declared sanctuary for the child, Korax continued, but Drakkar refuses to recognize her authority. Larathi struggled to sit up, still weakened from the birth. Help me stand, Riker. I will not meet this threat lying down. You need to rest. I need to protect our son, she interrupted firmly. In our clan. Understanding the futility of arguing with her, Riker helped her to her feet. She swayed slightly but steadied herself, cradling Tharian protectively against her chest. They didn't have to wait long. Drakkar's voice boomed from the corridor, demanding entry. When the doors opened again, he stood there with a dozen armed warriors, his expression a mask of righteous fury. The abomination must be examined, he declared, for the safety of all Keth Valar. My son is not an abomination, Larathi replied, her voice steady despite her exhaustion. He is the heir to Clan Navarin and the fulfillment of prophecy. A convenient prophecy that appeared just when you needed it, Drakkar sneered. A prophecy written ages before any of us were born, came another voice. The High Elder entered, flanked by representatives from every major and minor clan. A prophecy that speaks of unity, not division. Drakar's gaze darted around the room, noting how outnumbered his faction had become. You would all follow this outsider? This human who knows nothing of our ways? This human who passed every trial you set before him, Korax pointed out. This human who has brought more honor to his adopted clan in months than you have brought to Keth in years. This human who loves his wife and son, Riker added quietly, and will do whatever it takes to protect them. Something shifted in Drakar's expression, a recognition, perhaps, that he had miscalculated, that in his obsession with tradition and purity, he had failed to see how the winds of change were already blowing through Kethvalar. The child will unite the clans, the High Elder stated firmly. Not today, perhaps, but in time. The prophecy is clear, and the ancestors have shown their will through the blade's choice. For a long moment, the chamber balanced on a knife's edge. Then, with a growl of frustration, Drakar lowered his weapon. This is not over, but he warned, but the threat sounded hollow even to his own ears. It is over, the High Elder corrected. The Council has voted. Clan Keth will accept the legitimacy of the Norvaran heir, or Clan Keth will stand alone. Faced with the unified opposition of every other clan, Drakar had no choice but to retreat. As his followers filed out, the tension in the room gradually dissipated, replaced by a cautious optimism. Well, Riker said, turning back to Lirathi and their son. That was quite a welcome to the world, little one. Lirathi smiled tiredly. He is his father's son, already bringing change wherever he goes. 1 year later, Riker stood on the highest balcony of the Norvaran fortress, watching as ships from Earth descended through Kethvalar's atmosphere, the first official diplomatic delegation from the human worlds. In his arms, Therion babbled excitedly, pointing at the fiery contrails with tiny violet fingers. Yes, those are from where Daddy comes from, Riker explained, and someday we'll take you there to see it. Lirathi joined them, her silver hair now adorned with the formal markings of a clan leader. The past year had seen remarkable changes on Kethvalar. The prophecy, combined with the undeniable reality of Therion's healthy development, had shifted centuries of isolationist thinking. Under the joint leadership of Riker and Lirathi, Clan Norvaran had spearheaded a new era of cooperation between the clans. Even Drakar, after months of resistance, had eventually accepted the new reality, especially after Korax challenged and replaced him as head of Clan Keth in a surprisingly bloodless transition of power. Are you nervous? Lirathi asked, slipping her arm around Riker's waist, about introducing my alien wife and half-alien son to my former commanding officer? Not at all, he replied with a grin that belied his words. In the Great Hall, representatives from all clans had gathered for the historic meeting. The Earth delegation, led by Admiral Charles, entered with appropriate ceremony, though Riker noted the barely concealed amazement in their eyes as they took in the ancient architecture and the violet-skinned Kethvalarians. Captain Voss, Admiral Charles greeted him with a crisp salute that quickly melted into a genuine smile. When you disappeared on what was supposed to be a routine refueling stop, I never expected to find you married to an alien clan leader with a half-human son. Life takes unexpected turns, Admiral, Riker replied, returning the salute before clasping the older man's hand. May I present Lirathi Envaran, my wife and co-leader of Clan Envaran, and our son, Therion. The Admiral's eyes widened as he took in the child, undeniably a blend of both species, yet somehow harmonious rather than discordant. Remarkable, he murmured. Truly remarkable. Later, as the diplomatic reception wound down, Riker found himself alone with Admiral Charles in one of the fortress's ancient courtyards. You've done something extraordinary here, Voss, the Admiral said, something none of our xenobiologists thought possible. I just picked up a sword, Riker shrugged. Everything else followed from that one moment. Sometimes that's all it takes. One moment of courage that changes everything. The Admiral turned to him. The Alliance is very interested in establishing permanent relations with Kethvalar. Your son represents possibilities we never considered. He's not a science experiment, Riker said firmly. Of course not, Charles agreed quickly. But he is living proof that our species are more compatible than anyone imagined, and that has profound implications for the future. Riker nodded slowly. Larathi and I have discussed this. We want Therian to know both worlds, both heritages, and we want him to be the first of many bridges between our peoples, not the only one. Then we are in agreement, the Admiral smiled. The Alliance is prepared to offer Keth Valor full diplomatic recognition and trade privileges. In return, we ask only for cultural exchange and the opportunity to learn from each other. When the Earth delegation finally departed for their temporary quarters, Riker and Larathi retreated to their private chambers, where they placed their sleeping son in his crib, a beautiful piece crafted from earth oak and inlaid with Keth Valerian silver. Your Admiral seems wise, Larathi observed. I believe this alliance will benefit both our peoples. He is, Riker agreed. And he's right about one thing. What we've created here is extraordinary. He wrapped his arms around her from behind. Not just the political alliance, but this, United States. Therian. Larathi turned in his embrace, her eyes reflecting the soft light from the crystal lamps. When you first wielded my clan's sword, I thought you had ruined everything. Now I understand that you saved everything. Not just my life, but my clan's future. But we saved it together, he corrected gently. And we'll build that future together, one day at a time. As they stood in the quiet of their chambers, the transformed clan blade hanging on the wall nearby seemed to pulse with a subtle light, as if the ancestors themselves were offering their blessing to this new chapter in the ancient story of Keth Valor. Outside, the twin moons cast their silver glow over the mountain fortress, illuminating a world forever changed by one human's impulsive act of courage and the unexpected love that followed. In the crib, Therian Riker Invaran, heir to two worlds and harbinger of a new age, slept peacefully, unaware of the legacy he embodied or the future he represented. But his parents knew, as did all who had witnessed his birth and the union that created him. Some bonds transcend worlds, and some destinies are written in the stars long before we recognize them. For Riker, who had once been a rootless wanderer among those stars, the greatest adventure of his life had begun the moment he grasped a sword to protect a stranger. Now, as husband to Larathi and father to Therian, he had found not just a clan, but a home and a purpose greater than any he could have imagined. And it had all started because he wielded her clan's sword to protect her, oblivious that he now had to become her husband.